Hey, what's up? You be chilling. What's up, man? How you been? How was your Christmas, man? Hope you have a good New Year too. Oh shit! Fucking Bisbee News in New Orleans, man. What's up, dude? Awesome, man. Five of a kind media. Hey, man. Just here, bro. Hey, what's up, Stuart? All the way from Georgia. What's up, John? Let's hit that like button, folks. What's up, O3? Hey, thank you guys very much. Thank you, thank you. All work, no play. What's up, dude? Ah, shit. Here we go with the train already. Well, good thing we get it out of the way now. Um, hey, it was good, bro. It was good. It's just a live readout, just about the Grand Canyon, the deaths in Grand Canyon, and the Apache kid. Hey, what's up, Pose? Hey, not Mouse. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. God damn. Oh, 03, 10 of you. What's up, no name? Alrighty. Hit that like button, folks. We'll go ahead and get started. Just a couple more people need to hit that like button. Oh, all right. Doing some crochet, right? All right, folks. Guess we'll go ahead and get started. It's about the mysterious Grand Canyon deaths. So let's enjoy. The Grand Canyon is in a state of constant realignment. The changes are subtle, almost unnoticed by the human eye because they occurred not in mere days or weeks, but over the millennia. It's been that way for more than 6 million years, ever since the Colorado River and other forces of nature began carving the wandering gorge into the plateaus of northern Arizona. The canyon is a spectacular sight, one of the seven natural wonders of the world, and it attracts more than 5 million visitors each year. But its scenic beauty conceals a dark side. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people have been injured or lost their lives in its depths. Because it has been there for so long, there are no exact figures on how many deaths have occurred on the trails, side canyons, and the river that runs through it. But since the 1880s, when people first started keeping track of such things, there have been at least 600 recorded fatalities. Most of them are single episodes in which death is caused by overexertion, falling, drowning, suicide, and even murder. The largest toll, 240 deaths between 1956 and 2003, came from aircraft accidents. In 1956, a TWA Lockheed Super Constellation and a United States Douglas DC-7 collided over the canyon, killing everyone on board on both planes, a total of 128 victims. Yeah, I'll work. 30 years later, 25 people died when a helicopter rose from below the canyon rim and smashed into a two-engine airplane. 8 more tourists died when a sightseeing plane lost an engine and crashed in 1995. Helicopter crashes in 2001 and 2003 resulted in another 13 deaths. In almost all the other cases, the 23 murders, the 50 suicides, the 80 drownings, the bodies have been recovered and grieving relatives given closure. But nobody knows, and probably nobody ever will know, what happened to adventurers Glenn and Bessie Hyde and explorers O.G. Howland, O.G. Howland, Seneca Howland, and William Dunn. They all disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Their bodies were never found, and their fates are still being debated as much as 130 years later. The case of Glenn and Bessie Hyde is the most intriguing and still attracts considerable attention, primarily because it keeps getting solved and unsolved. But the young couple's disappearance in 1928 was not the first involving would-be canyon conquerors. Nearly 60 years earlier, in 1869, Major John Wesley Powell and a small band of brave and intrepid companions set out to be first on a record to explore the entire 277 miles of the canyon by raft. Powell, a one-armed Civil War veteran, party, his party of 8 were under the sponsorship of the Smithsonian Institution. Their goal was to map the river, make contact with Native American tribes, and record geological data. Their 10-month journey would take them into uncharted areas and unknown peril, even though they already had some concept of the roaring waters that awaited them. The group divided themselves, their rations, tools, instruments, and other necessities among 3 sturdy handcrafted boats that were specifically built to withstand the rapids along the Colorado. Their instruments and supplies were stored in watertight cabins in case any of the boats were caught in the swirling waters and capsized. Despite all the extra precautions and reinforcements, the boats were a far cry from the well equipped, almost unsinkable multi passenger motorized rafts that carry tourists along the river today. And they encountered many hardships because although they were very well prepared, the crew endured many dunkings, which meant they had to halt their journey to dry out supplies, repair broken equipment, and find new wood for the ores they lost. Powell kept meticulous journals in which he described the hardships of the rugged land and untamed water, as well as vivid descriptions of the canyon's natural beauty. The rigors of the journey eventually became too much for some members of the expedition. On the evening of August 27, 1869, three of the men approached Powell and said they'd had enough. They were leaving. They were still at least 45 miles from where the trek was supposed to end, but that made little or no difference. The three men, Captain O.G. Hallen, his brothers Seneca, and William Dunn, were determined. They figured they could scramble up the south rim of the canyon. They make contact with either Mormon settlements or Native American villages for supplies and directions back to civilization. Hey, thanks, bro. I appreciate you being here, man. What up, secret agent? What's up, Ben? Powell tried to talk them out of leaving and urged them to stay with the group. He warned that the climb out of the canyon was dangerous and that the nearest Mormon settlement was at least 75 miles away, even if they did get to the top. Seneca Howland weakened and tried to convince the other two that it was too dangerous, but his argument had no impact. The trio left camp that morning, carrying with them letters and mementos from the others and a copy of the expedition journal, which Powell had kept in duplicate. They were never seen or heard from again. Powell and his remaining crew of 5 returned to the river and got through the next set of rapids in a few minutes. They beached their boats and fired a shot to signal they had made it through, hoping that the other 3 would come back. After a lengthy wait and no response, they resumed their journey without them. No one was or is certain what happened. The most common speculation was that they did reach the canyon rim only to be killed by Indians who mistook them for some miners who had raped a young tribal maiden. A second but less popular theory was that white settlers killed them because they were considered interlopers. The mystery took on a bit of an added meaning in 1939 with the Whitewater, when the Whitewater where the trio left the main group was named Separation Rapid, and a plaque was placed at the site to honor their memory. The memorial had a short life, however. It is now covered by the eastern end of Lake Mead. 95 days after they started, Powell and the 5 men who toughed it out with him emerged from the wilderness with maps, fossils, sketches, and other information that would prove invaluable to those who would follow. Powell later was appointed head of the U.S. Geological Survey, and the book he wrote about the journey is still ranked as one of the classics of exploration. Glenn and Bessie had a similar vision when they set out to explore and conquer the Grand Canyon in 1928. Hey, what's happening, Tapatios? Okay. They were young newlyweds, restless and looking for adventure. Their plan was to traverse the wild waters of the Colorado River with the twin goals of setting a speed record for the journey and having Bessie become the first woman to run the river through the entire canyon. If they were successful, they reasoned, there'd be a book deal, the lecture circuit, and potentially a series of reenactments of the vaudeville stage. Glenn had some experience as a river runner. He had taken already raft trips down Idaho's Salmon and Snake Rivers. But Bessie was a novice. Only 22 at the time, she had led a rather full life prior to hooking up with Glenn Hyde. She was born in Maryland and raised in West Virginia as Bessie Haley. Married when she was 20, discovered when she was 22, or divorced when she was 22, remarried at 22, She attended Marshall College and married Earl Helmick, a high school classmate in Catlettsburg, Kentucky in 1926. The couple lived together for only a couple of months before Bessie returned to her parents' home in West Virginia and left to study art in San Francisco. The career move didn't last much longer than her marriage. In 1927, she left San Francisco aboard a steamship headed for Los Angeles. En route, she met Glenn Hyde, and then they began a shipboard romance that blossomed into true love and a marriage proposal. But Bessie was still married to Helmick, and he refused to agree to a divorce. The young lovers found an easy solution. Bessie moved to Elko, Nevada, established the required residency, and got a divorce decree on April 18, 1928. She married Glenn Hyde the next day. Hyde considered himself an adventurer who was stuck in a humdrum life. He was born in Spokane, Washington in 1898 and lived there until he was 12, when the family moved to California. He ended his schooling after a short time in college and moved to Idaho, where he worked on a family farm. He and his new wife returned to the farm, but soon decided there was more to life than milking cows and shoveling manure. At the end of summer in 1928, they decided it was time to take a delayed honeymoon. Their destination would be the Grand Canyon, where they would make a boat trip to the rapids in a bulky watercraft that Hyde had built. Their plans drew some attention from local newspapers. A year later, the same newspapers would be filled with stories about them, but they would not be success stories. Yeah, I hope everything's going well, Anon. I don't know what kind of appointment it is, but hope it's nothing bad. The couple started their journey in Utah on the Green River. Their craft was a flat-bottomed wooden sweep scow that weighed 2 tons. Despite its weight, the scow was a type of commonly used for river rafting at the time. There was also a rather dangerous custom among rafters. They didn't wear life preservers or jackets. The boats didn't even carry such precautionary equipment. This factor may or may not have played a role in what would eventually happen. The Hyde set out in October, and things went well at first. Photographers documented portions of their trip, and the young honeymooners sent upbeat messages back to their family, proving that they were making remarkable progress and were ahead of schedule. Bessie also kept a detailed journal mentioning every rapid and twist in the river, as well as the emotions they felt while traversing them. They floated through canyons that already had names, and some that didn't. They reached Glen Canyon and Lee's Ferry by early November, again ahead of schedule, and according to one message Glenn sent his father, it was great sport. Yeah, Tapatíos, it's nice, man. It's nice right now, believe it or not. Not even a smidge of cold right now. It's nice, bro. They rested at Lee's Ferry for a while, talked with some of the locals, and were given well-intended advice to abandon their quest. Jeremiah Johnson, whose father had died on the river, warned them that they were playing with death. Owen Clark, a government employee, also cautioned them about taking a woman along on a track that had been accomplished only a few times before by men. But he also noted Hyde appeared competent and added it was surprising the way he could handle that boat. As the Grand Canyon narrowed beyond Lee's Ferry, the river became swifter and the rapids grew worse. But the pair didn't relent. They arrived at Bright Angel Creek in mid-November. They tied up their cumbersome scow and hiked up the South Kebab Trail to the canyon's south rim. They rested there for a while, then gathered up the supplies they needed for the remainder of their journey. They then met Emery Kolb, the legendary Grand Canyon photographer. He drove them around the south rim, treated them to lunch, and at their request, snapped a couple of shots of them as they stood at the canyon's edge. told them they could pick up the photos on their return trip, and the Hydes assured him they'd be back for them. They also met with newspaper reporters whose accounts were published as far as away as New York. Shortly before their departure, they wrote that they would be their final letters to relatives and friends. Both letters were filled with optimism and hope. It was November 16th when they put their boat back into the Colorado along with an unexpected guest. Adolph Gilbert Sutro, a wealthy adventurer who had once set speed and distant records with an airplane, asked if he might ride along for a few miles. The Hydes agreed. Unfortunately for Sutro, he had inadvertently hooked up with the duo as they were about to encounter some of the roughest water on the river. After 2 days and 7 miles with them, Sutro relied on his philosophy that it's better to be a live coward than a dead hero. Hey, what's up, Ron Coke? All the way in Europe. Hey, man. Nice to have you here, man. Welcome to Arizona. Hey, okay, Anon. I appreciate you being in. Thank you very much. Hyde had earlier messaged his father to expect a telegram from Needles, California on December 9th, which would have been the last day of their journey, as well as Hyde's 30th birthday. When he heard nothing after 3 days, the elder Hyde drove to the Grand Canyon and organized a search party. Using a small airplane, the would-be rescuers spotted the boat in early December because it was at the bottom of the canyon. They couldn't reach it until Christmas Day. It was in excellent condition, sitting upright with 42 notches carved into the gunwale, one for each day of the trip. Most of the supplies were intact, a camera and some film were undamaged. The searchers also found Glenn's gun, hiking boots, and Bessie's journal. The last entry was dated November 30th, 1928. It was a series of dashes and numbers, apparently an attempt to mark water patterns they had to deal with. Yo, what up, Joe? Hey, we got another one. Yeah, he came just in time, man. Alrighty. The search for Glenn and Bessie went on for months with no more results. R.C. Hyde, Glenn's father, made other trips to the canyon, but they also were fruitless. He continued his quest until his death in 1945. By then, the speculation and rumors were already firmly entrenched. Investigators initially determined that the couple died in some sort of accident, probably drowned when their boat overturned. It was a solid presumption at every one of their stops along the way. The Hydes had related horror stories about being swept overboard, about being swept overboard, sometimes several times a day, as they maneuvered through eddies and whirlpools, bearing such names as Sockdolager, Labyrinth, and Cataract. Glenn's father told friends he believed they had problems with their boat, beached it in an attempt to walk out of the canyon but became lost and died in the surrounding woods. Extensive searches for their remains were also futile, however. Other versions of what might have happened likewise were never proven, but they abounded anyway. One was that Glenn Hyde was not an ideal husband. His obsession with becoming rich and famous turned him into some sort of brute who drove his wife beyond her abilities. That, coupled with the fact that the Hydes had been on the river for so long, caused marital problems that were exacerbated by the bullying tactics he deemed necessary to complete the voyage. According to his supposition, Bessie finally had enough. She snapped, turned on Glenn with a knife, and inflicted mortal wounds. Then she psyched out. Then she hiked out of the canyon to begin a new life as a widow using an assumed name. But friends and relatives were dismissed that theory on the grounds that Glenn was too mild-mannered and was too much in love to ever treat Bessie in such fashion. A second and much more believable suggestion is based on that love. Some theorists believe that when the couple reached the Vicious Rapids at mile 232, Bessie was washed overboard by the force of the water. When Glenn reached in to help her, she was also swept off the boat. With no one left on board to help them, both perished. That supposition meshes well with the one presented by the investigators. Another romantic theory put forth was that the couple wanted to get away from the dullness of farm life and start a new existence as different people out in the Golden West. So they pushed their scow up on the beach, hiked out the canyon together, and allegedly lived happily ever after. Considering how determined the Hydes were to reap the riches of a successful exertion, however, this seemed highly doubtful. In his later years, Sutra remembered that Hyde seemed obsessed with how much money he and his wife could make if they successfully completed their journey. He also noted that Bessie was terrified and registered stark fear. Those revelations, published after an interview with Sutro 30 years later, added fuel to the belief that Bessie might have turned on her husband out of fear for her own life. Some also concluded that it was the other way around. Glenn killed Bessie because she refused to continue the trip, thus dashing his hopes for life as a wealthy couple. After murdering her, he walked out of the canyon, took a different name, and lived out the remainder of his life somewhere in the West. Emery Kolb gave that theory some support when he told an interviewer that Bessie seemed apprehensive about going on and that she wondered if she'd ever wear nice shoes again. In one of the more ridiculous versions, Kolb himself becomes implicated in the mystery. According to some, Kolb felt so sorry for Bessie and her predicament that he killed Glenn to save her from a violent death on the Colorado River. This theory got some major support in 1976. After Kolb's death that year, a skeleton was found in his garage with a bullet lodged in the skull. Medical examination revealed that the skeleton was that of a man 6 feet tall and about 20 years old. But later tests by forensics experts determined that the age of the man was between 18 and 22 years old. Glenn was 29 when he disappeared. They also concluded that the victim had died no earlier than 1972. That forced speculators to look for different theories, and they did. Yeah, Ron, I agree there, man. One of these new suppositions even involved Bessie's first husband, Earl Helmick. According to that rather far-fetched sample of reasoning, Helmick had a violent temper and was so mad at her for the divorce he had something to do with her disappearance. But Helmick refused to even discuss such a scenario or become involved in any conversation that dealt with Bessie. Although the Hydes have been gone for more than 80 years, stories about their disappearances won't die. For several years after the incident, campers, hikers claimed they saw the Hydes living in the forest around the canyon. Then in the summer of 1971, while on a commercial river rafting expedition down the Colorado, the guide related to the story of Glenn and Bessie Hyde to the river runners as they sat around an evening campfire. As he presented his version of the tale, a short elderly woman amazed her companions by declaring that she knew what actually happened to Bessie Hyde because she was Bessie Hyde. She told the campers that Glenn had indeed beaten and brutalized her until she could take it no more. So she stabbed him to death. She left his body there on the floor of the canyon, hiked out to the south rim, and started a new life as Elizabeth Cutler, away from everything she had ever known, including her own family, and with no regrets for her action. Damn. She was ruthless. Some believed her. A tour guide spread the word to his co-workers, and they in turn informed all their clients that the mystery had been solved. But others weren't so accepting of the little old lady's story. Researchers soon discovered that she was 4 inches taller than Bessie, and birth records proved that she really was Elizabeth Cutler, born in Pomeroy, Ohio in 1908, not Bessie Haley Hyde, who was born in Maryland in 1905. Cutler, who died in 1998, recanted her story almost immediately. She said she was a former psychologist who simply enjoyed playing with people's minds. The mystery took a new direction in 1992, shortly after the death of legendary river runner Georgia Clark. While going through her belongings, one of her business associates found a copy of Glenn and Bessie's marriage license and a revolver tucked away in the back of Georgia's underwear drawer. The license was a certified copy with the original notary stamp on one corner, and it was issued to Glenn R. Hyde and Bessie Haley. Despite that, researchers and biographers have found little to substantiate the theory that she and Bessie Hyde were the same person, but they did uncover the fact that her given name wasn't Georgia. It was Bessie. She was born Bessie DeRoss and was born in Oklahoma. How Clark came into possession of the items remains a mystery, just like much of her own life. She was the first woman to run a boat through the Grand Canyon, the first woman outfitter, and the first woman to swim the canyon. But evidence discovered after her death raised the possibility that she had not been honest when talking about her past. And while she was well liked and had many friends, and no one was ever invited into her Las Vegas home. Although she never openly claimed to be Bessie Hyde, Richard Westwood, her biographer, noted that he wouldn't put it past the woman to leave the suspicious items behind simply to keep people guessing, adding, she was not above creating things that made a good story. And still the story lives on. In 2005, a California theatrical company presented an American opera entitled River's End. According to the press reviews, the music tells the true story of Glenn and Bessie Hyde, who began married life in a homemade boat going down the wild Colorado River. The presentation offers two possible conclusions about the couple's fate, as told by actors portraying river runners. Neither account solves anything, but the opera was well received. One critic observed that its use of lighting and sound create a hellish, claustrophobic world of nature where a man can dream, but the river rules. But in the end, as in real life, the production inevitably gives the same answer to the same oft-asked question. What happened to Glenn and Bessie Hyde? Only the river knows. Yeah. Hey, man, you never know how these things happen, man. Shit, it's just mysterious. Yeah, pose actor. Yeah, the Wild West. So, what'd you guys think about that one? Any thoughts on that? in comments. Hey, O3, Clyde Johnson, what's up, man? Luke Mitchell. Having trouble with your keyboard? Yeah, that's true. If it's what if everybody remembers it, I mean, shit, and it's been told from one person to the next. I mean, it's most likely real. All right, guys. If you guys haven't dropped each other's links to each other's channels, go right ahead and subscribe to each other. And we'll go ahead and get started on the next one. It's about the Apache Kid. You guys ready for that one? All right. We'll go ahead and get started. The old highway leading from Globe to Casa Grande through the Pinal Mountains was treacherous, even on a good day. Rutted by the unyielding iron-bound wheels of wagons and stage coaches that had been traversing it for years, the dirt road was filled with hairpin turns and steep slopes that forced the drivers of the horse-drawn vehicles to use extreme caution, regardless of how many times they had passed this way. Sheriff Glenn Reynolds is among those who knew the road well, so while history might later question his fateful decision on the morning of November 2nd, 1889, it was the right one for the time. Realizing that the stagecoach probably couldn't navigate Kelvin Grade with a full load of passengers and unaware that there was a good chance that a snowstorm was headed toward them, the lawman told the driver to stop at the foot of the incline. Then he ordered 7 of the 9 men inside the coach to get out and walk. It was a deadly mistake. The 9 men were passengers, or prisoners, all headed for Yuma Territorial Prison. 8 of them were Apaches, the other was a Mexican. Convicted of many charges including murder, they were chained together, hand and foot, but their shackles left each one with a free arm. Sheriff Reynolds and his deputy, William Hunky Dory Holmes, were well armed and felt little danger as they trudged up the slope of the convicts. The other 2 prisoners were secure in the coach, and the driver, Eugene Middleton, was also armed. The hike would likely be a short one before everyone was back inside the coach and their journey would resume. Just like the several others the sheriff had conducted across the same path, but not this time. As soon as the stage disappeared over the crest of the hill, 6 of the convicts walking behind the stagecoach encircled and overpowered the 2 lawmen. Some of them began beating Holmes with large rocks, which may not have been necessary because Holmes had a heart condition and probably died of a heart attack when the attack began. Damn. Escapees grabbed his rifle and shot him anyway. This left Reynolds outnumbered and trapped. He's unable to get off even a single shot before the prisoner wrestles his rifle away and turned it against him, killing him with 3 bullets to his chest. Back on top of the hill, Middleton heard the shots and they knew they could only mean trouble. But the 9 men entourage was hidden from his view, so he had no idea who had shot at whom or nor why. Hey, what's up, Four Corners? Welcome in. Reynolds and Holmes were already lying lifeless on the trail, and their killers were racing toward the stagecoach. Seriously wounded and partially paralyzed, Middleton had only one chance. He fell to the ground and played dead. The convicts had removed the keys to their shackles from the bodies of the two slain lawmen. They freed themselves, then unchained the two prisoners who remained in the coach. One of them was Nad Diaz, a convicted murderer who come to an ignominious, ignominious end. Sorry, guys. Never seen that word before. The other was Haskell Bay Nay Tail. Haskell Bay Nay Tail. He was better known as the Apache Kid. Is about to become a legend. The myth that would eventually raise the kid to some degree of immortality began innocently about 30 years before, when a boy was born into the White Mountain Apache tribe in the wilderness near Globe. His parents named him Haskell Bay Nate. His family was part of Capitan Chiquito's band, a peaceful group that lived in an area still known as Aravipa Canyon. It was a near idyllic setting: mountain springs, running streams, wooden canyons, magnificent sand, stone cliffs, and plenty of game for hunting. But the area lost its innocence in 1872 when an edict from President Ulysses S. Grant established the San Carlos Indian Reservation northeast of Globe and ordered all Apaches, regardless of tribal affiliation, to move there and stay there. A year later, a prospector found a large globe-shaped boulder that weighed more than 70 pounds and was assayed as almost pure silver. Hey, Russell, how you doing, man? Welcome. What city I'm at, or what city is it talking about? Because I'm in Wilcox, Arizona, man. A year later, a prospector found a large globe-shaped boulder that weighed more than 70 pounds and was assayed as almost pure silver. The discovery brought miners, settlers, bootleggers, preachers, prostitutes, and all others commonly affiliated with the chance for huge wealth in the area, forever changing the lives of the Apaches. Hey, anytime, man, anytime, dude. Just use it wisely. I give the wrenches to people, just to keep an eye in chat, and you guys drop each other's links just to make sure that nobody's putting spam in the chat or porn links or whatever. Like if you guys see that kind of stuff, you guys are more than welcome to get them out of chat and to drop each other's links, of course. They were consigned to the reservation, a patch of ground described by the one military historian as a gravely flat, where the land was dotted with scrawny, dejected lines of scattered cottonwoods, shrunken, almost leafless. It was dry, the recorder noted, and rain was so infrequent that it took on the semblance of a phenomenon when it came at all. Dry winds swept the plain, denuding it of every vestige of vegetation. It was also hot, he added. In the summer, a temperature of 110 degrees in the shade was cool weather. Damn, yeah. I guess, I mean, shit, that's still hot. You can only imagine what it was outside of that damn shade. Brought to such a place after living his formative years in the untamed wilderness of Aravipa Canyon, the young Apache was forced to alter his lifestyle to fit into those whom he deemed his captors. He made the adjustment while hanging around Globe, and the government agency in charge of the reservation and doing whatever odd jobs came his way. During that time, he underwent another major change. Unable or unwilling to deal with his given name of Haske Bay Natale, the Anglos who now controlled his life began calling him the Apache Kid, and the name stayed with him for the remainder of his life. Well, I agree on that. I mean, that's a lot more easier to pronounce than the other one. And yet, despite all the alterations that had been thrust upon him, the kid was known as friendly, trustworthy, intelligent, and ambitious. Clay Buford recognized those traits, a former Confederate soldier who migrated west and eventually became chief of the San Carlos police force. He saw potential in the teenager boy, so he took him under his wing, taught him English, let him tag along as he policed the reservation, and made him sort of a camp mascot. The experience would lead the kid even further along the path that would become his destiny. The U.S. Army was also on the lookout for scouts, and the kid's willingness to learn made him a suitable candidate. After he applied and was accepted, another major figure entered into his life. His name was Al Sieber. All right. Hey, Sewer Dog, what's happening, man? Welcome in. I appreciate you being here. Sieber was the Army's chief of scouts. He was smart and he knew the ways of the Apache. He was born in Germany, migrating with his family to Pennsylvania and then to a farming community in Minnesota. He enlisted in the 1st Minnesota Volunteer Infantry and saw combat in many major battles during the Civil War. He was wounded at Gettysburg, then headed west after being mustered out at the end of the war in 1865. Oh, here comes another train. Yeah, man. I guess the trains ain't that bad. I mean, just kind of noisy. I'd rather be in the library, man, but the library's been closed, so I have to settle for the park. After arriving in Arizona, Sieber was wounded again in 1875. during a battle with the Apaches north of Phoenix. More than a decade later, he was wounded a third time, and that injury spelled disaster for the Apache kid. Prior to that, however, Sieber had determined that the young Apache had natural leadership qualities and would be an asset to his corps, so he hired him. For the next several years, the kid excelled as a scout. He accompanied General George Crook on at least two campaigns, and by 1882 he had been promoted to the rank of sergeant. Ironically, his promotion came shortly before the Battle of Big Dry Wash, which would be the last major confrontation between the Apaches and the Army in Arizona. While on a Mexican tour in the town of Guasabas, he was a participant in a drunken riot that almost cost him his life. Rather than have the kid face a firing squad, however, a local judge fined him $20 and the Army recalled him to San Carlos. Life was good then. The kid was well liked, and his ability to function as an Army scout while maintaining his position and heritage among his own people had placed him in an ideal situation. Equally important, Sieber had complete trust in him. Unfortunately for all those involved, that proved to be an error in judgment on the veteran scout's part. Although he was very familiar with the Apache ways, Sieber overlooked the fact that Apache law transcended all those imposed by the white conquerors. One of the key elements of the Apache law was that a wronged person had the right to settle an issue, large or small, in a manner of his own choosing. It was, in a sense, the Apache version of the infamous eye for an eye tradition erroneously practiced by non-Indians over the centuries. Hey, what's up, Four Corner Auditing? What's happening, bro? In 1886, the kid's father, Togo de Chus, was murdered by Gun Zizi. The two had once been rivals pursuing the same young Apache woman. Togo de Chus won her hand and she became his wife and the kid's mother. But Gun Zizi never forgot, and he took his vengeance by killing his former competitor. Other Indians soon caught the murderer and executed him, but the kid suspected that Old Rip, Gun Zizi's brother, had played a role in his father's death. He swore vengeance against him. Tribal law dictated it. That unwritten code required a man to exact blood to avenge a father's death. The kid asked for permission to leave the reservation and go after the suspected accomplice. The request was denied. But an opportunity arose in May 1887 when Sieber left the kid in charge of the guardhouse at San Carlos while he and another military official were away. The kid saw his chance, and Apache just followed. Old Rip was dispatched with a single shot. Sieber felt betrayed and was justifiably furious when he returned to San Carlos. He ordered the kid and 4 other missing scouts to give themselves up. When they did, he confined them to the same guardhouse they were supposed to be watching. Hebrew! What's up, brother? Sieber felt betrayed and was justifiably furious when he returned to San Carlos. He and 4 other missing scouts to give themselves up. When they did, he confined them to the same guardhouse. Okay. His action upset other Apaches who believed that their law superseded his law, and a small riot broke out. Someone fired a gun that set off a hail of bullets from several different positions. None was fired by the kid, but during the panic that followed, he and 16 other Apaches fled. However, irreparable damage had been done. Sieber's left ankle was shattered by one of the stray bullets, and the injury would leave him crippled for the rest of his life. It changed his attitude toward the Apache Kid. When the kid and his band surrendered peacefully a few weeks later, Sieber was foremost among his accusers as they were brought to trial. They were charged with mutiny and desertion, found guilty, and given death sentences. Before any of the sentences could be carried out, an unexpected ally came to their defense. A veteran of the frontier conflicts, General Nelson Miles intervened on their behalf, protesting that the Apaches did not understand the serious nature of their deed because, according to Apache custom, the kid's vengeance was justified and not important enough to merit punishment. His argument was successful. No, Rosie things. You didn't miss anything. You're just in time. Although you can rewind it if you feel like it. I did finish another chapter before this, so we're touching up on the Apache Kid. And that's him right there. His argument was successful. The sentences were reduced. The kid got 10 years in federal prison. After serving less than a year in the island prison, Alcatraz, however, the Apache's cases were examined by a review board which determined the jurors at their trials were prejudiced against the Indians. The sentences were thrown out. They returned to San Carlos, but not to a happy ending. More court decisions followed, and eventually civilian and military authorities decided to apprehend all Indians accused of federal crimes and retry them in territorial courts. By the time this ruling was handed down, Al Sieber had been hobbling around on crutches for more than a year. Although he publicly acknowledged that the kid had not fired the gun, Sieber still held him responsible. And even though the kid was now living peacefully on the reservation, Sieber made sure his name was on the list of criminal Indians. When his trial came up, the kid was accused of attempting to kill Al Sieber. This time there was no General Miles to intercede. The sentence was 7 years in the territorial prison in Yuma. On October 30th, 1889, the judgments were finalized. The sheriff was given his orders, and the legend of the Apache Kid was about to burst forth into the lore of the western frontier. Sheriff Reynolds' first selection to accompany him on the transfer of prisoners to Casa Grande was Holmes, better known as Hunky Dory, because of a poem he had written and set to the melody of an old Irish tune. One of the lines went, "Hooray for Hunky Dory," and he sang it so often that he was given the name. Holmes had been prospecting the area for more than 20 years but never struck it rich, so he took odd jobs around Globe. One of them was serving as a deputy, even though his heart condition was fairly well known in the area. Eugene Middleton, the driver, was also the owner of the stage line. He was not too thrilled about carrying the prisoners over the rugged terrain, but he eventually agreed to make the run. He climbed aboard, whistled at his horses, and guided the stage as it left Globe in the morning hours of November 1st, 1889. The trek to Casa Grande through the Pinals was about 40 miles long. When they reached Casa Grande, the prisoners would be transferred to a train and shipped to Yuma. What's up, Al? What's with the mad face there, Al? What's going on? The trek to Casa Grande through the Pinals, so yeah, the group arrived at the riverside halfway point around sunset and made camp for the night after making sure the prisoners were all secured. They were back on the road before sunrise, arriving at Kelvin Grade early in the morning. Sheriff Reynolds, Deputy Holmes, and 7 prisoners got off the stage to lighten the load as the horses trained to haul it up the incline. No one knows for certain if the prisoners planned the attack or if they simply recognized an opportunity. Oh. Thought you were mad at something, man. I was like, damn, what happened here, man? Did I miss something? The only account available was given by Abbott, the horse thief, who has escaped into the brush after the brutal attack. After the others fled, he cut one of the horses loose from the stage team and rode into Florence, where he alerted authorities and told them his version of what happened. Middleton also survived but was unable to give complete details about the incident, but he hadn't seen most of it. Okay. All right, folks. I'm gonna have to move it over a little bit. All right. All right. The crest of the hill blocked his view, but after the criminals fled, he managed to drag himself 5 miles back to the Riverside station, where he sounded the alarm that triggered the largest manhunt in the history of the Arizona Territory. It was not only the territory's largest manhunt, it was the manhunt that made the Apache Kid the shadowy figure that gives him historical importance. And at that point, all the necessary ingredients for a legend, fact, fiction, hearsay, rumor, and speculation were thrown into a common pot. Ironically, an act of kindness on the Apache Kid's part played an important role in the creation of his legend. After the killers freed the kid and the other shackled prisoner, two of them approached the spot where Middleton had fallen. Although stunned, he was aware that his own life was probably going to end right there. One of the murderers aimed a rifle at the driver's head and was about to shoot when the kid ordered him to pull the rifle away. He said the man was already dead, so there was little sense wasting another bullet. Then they fled, leaving two dead bodies, a wounded man, a horse thief, and a stagecoach to whatever fate awaited them there in the Pinal Mountains. In the near pandemonium that followed, immigrants to the territory got another piece of bad news. Masai, a dangerous Apache renegade, was also running loose in the area. He had escaped from a train taking Apaches to Florida and had managed to travel the 1,500 miles back to his homeland. So now there was a growing fear that Masai and the Apache Kid would team up and create havoc among the settlers. Ooh. Whether they did or did not is uncertain, but the possibility was so strong that every crime perpetuated against the whites from them on was blamed on one or both of them. They knew the territory, the mountains, canyons, all the hiding places and watering holes. This gave them a major advantage over their pursuers. They easily eluded capture and their feats became legendary. Meanwhile, many of the others involved in the creation of the Apache Kid's emergence as a sort of folk hero were dealt their own fates. Those who had escaped with the kid were recaptured by military and civilian patrols within 10 months. Some were killed by Indian scouts. Some committed suicide while in captivity. Al Sieber served as a scout on the San Carlos reservation for more than 30 years, but left his position as a disagreement with the military. Later, while working on a road construction near Globe, he was killed by a rolling boulder. A monument was erected to his memory at the scene of the accident. It's still there along Arizona 188 near Roosevelt Dam. But two of the central figures survived. Jesus Abbott, the horse thief, was given a pardon for bringing news of the escape to the attention of the authorities. Eugene Middleton, despite his near-fatal injury, lived for another 40 years until his death in Globe in 1929. His gravesite is near those of Sheriff Reynolds and Deputy Holmes. The kid was never apprehended, and details surrounding the remainder of his life up to his eventual demise remain sketchy. There are many, and they cover decades. Regardless of what happened to him after the escape, the kid became a veritable nightmare for those living in the central and southeastern parts of the territory. Apache kid sightings became common from the Tonto Basin near Globe down into the Sierra Madre Mountains in northern Mexico. Almost every murder that occurred in the white area was attributed to him, justifiably or not. Reports of his death were equally widespread, but another massacre or kidnapping usually occurred a short time later and belied the claims. Hey, it's no problem at all. I like doing it, and hey, I learned something too. So everybody get benefits from this. You know what I mean? He was, according to those who lived in the area at the time, everywhere. Those who feared him said he returned to the San Carlos reservation several times, primarily to steal young women for temporary mating, or that he led small outlaw bands that rustled cattle and stole food. In early 1899, an officer of the Mexican rurales claimed that the kid was the head of a small settlement of well-behaved Apache renegades living in the state of Chihuahua. Authorities offered monetary rewards for his capture, but no one ever claimed them. Those who, okay. Authorities offered monetary rewards. Ranchers maintain he used the San Simon Valley in Arizona and Skeleton Canyon on New Mexico as venues for his journeys to and from Mexico. In the 1920s and early 1930s, rumors began circulating that the kid was not only seen but had also talked with people along the Mexican border, and that he was living a peaceful existence on a ranch in the Mexican state of Sonora. Other versions of his exploits were nearly so sympathetic. Some stories had the Apache kid deserting his own brethren and becoming a loner, despite his own and feared by Anglo settlers. He allegedly killed the young women who he kidnapped after he was tired of them. He preyed on lone ranchers, cowboys, and prospectors because he was a coward, afraid to deal with more than one person at a time. He was murderous and vengeful, murdering whites in retaliation for the way he claimed the Apache scouts had been mistreated by the army. Hey, thank you, Pose. I appreciate it. Appreciate it very much. You guys are always welcome here. Whether true or not, the stories elevated the kid to a legendary status. He moved like a ghost across the desert, taking whatever he wanted, killing whoever he chose. As the stories increased, so did the fear. Every noise, every shadow could be the Apache kid closing in for another kill. Every tree, every large rock could be his hiding place as he waited for another victim. The theory was that by the time you saw him, it was too late. By 1893, the reward money was up to $5,000, but the kid remained loose. He showed up at the reservation to steal another man's wife and was identified by her children. In 1894, he had a chance meeting with another former scout, asked about Zebra and the reward, then rode off. In 1924, one of the kid's nephews claimed that his infamous uncle was alive and living in Mexico. And with each alleged sighting, there came another alleged death story. One involved Ed Wallapai Clark, an Arizona rancher. According to Clark, the kid and his men surrounded his ranch house, but Clark slipped out of the house after dark, creeping down his corral to see two Indians leading away his favorite horse. Clark fired twice. The next morning, he found the body of a woman, supposedly a kid wife, and a trail of blood. Clark followed the blood trail until it disappeared, but later claimed that one of his shots had mortally wounded the intruder. It was the kid, all right, he later said. He crawled away to die somewhere, I know. Another report claimed that a posse led by Charles Anderson shot and killed the kid near Kingston, a mining camp in near New Mexico, on September 10th, 1905. Another scout, Mickey Free, once bought a piece of decomposed skin to Al Sieber as proof that the kid was dead. Free claimed the skin bore the mark of a faint W similar to those that had been tattooed on the forehead of all San Carlos males that were forced onto the reservation. The evidence was inconclusive. None of the known photos of the kid show the mark, but they may have been because the blue ink used in the tattooing process did not show up well in photographs. Arizona rancher John Slaughter also claimed he was responsible for the kid's demise. Slaughter said he killed him in the Sierra Madres but didn't tell anyone until much later because he had crossed the Mexican border and didn't want to get into legal trouble. A group of Mexican lawmen circulated a story that they had killed the kid in 1899. Their claim was based on the fact that the three of the Apaches they had slain was carrying Sheriff Reynolds' pistol and watch. The Mexicans assumed that the kid would more than likely have kept these items after the massacre, so they presumed that the current owner was the kid himself, even though there was no proof that he had actually taken the items after the escape. That version was quickly shot full of holes because the dead Apache was an old man with long white hair, and the kid would have been in his mid-30s at the time. In September 1906, a New Mexican posse following a trail of stolen horses along the north rim of Wild Horse Canyon ambushed two Indians. The first was killed instantly, but the second, although badly wounded, escaped into the thicket. Later that day, an Apache woman was apprehended in a nearby town. She said she was the wife of the Apache kid and that he was the second person shot by the posse. Searchers later found his skeleton in the immediate area and assumed it was his. Mexico authorities gave that version so much credence that they named a mountain peak after him and designated a site on the peak as the kid's gravesite. It's in the San Mateo Mountains of the Cibola National Forest. The supposed gravesite is 1 mile northwest of Apache Kid Peak and Cyclone Saddle. Okay. Yeah, shit. That story had also been told with a different ending. In this one, the woman said she was married to Masai and it was his remains the searchers found. Since none of the claims was supported by actual fact, the question of what actually happened to the Apache kid and when it actually happened remains a mystery. The most common theory is that he lived his final years in peace before succumbing to old age in Mexico. But his legend is forever emblazoned into the history of the Old West and is still remembered in a variety of ways. Historians and researchers are still debating his actual name. The consensus is that it was Haske Bay Ne Tail, but some claim it was Hashki Bina Teal, while others claim it was Skibi Nanted. In 1980, the Congress of the United States designated 44,626 acres in the San Mateo Mountains of western New Mexico as Apache Kid Wilderness. The area contains a 68-mile trail system. The main trail leads to the spot where that posse allegedly gunned him down in 1906 and to the marker proclaiming it as the kid's gravesite. Author Phyllis de la Garza had written a well-researched biography entitled The Apache Kid. Dan Thrapp deals with the kid's relationship with the Army Scout mentor in his book, Al Sieber, Chief of Scouts. And the Apache Kid was a fictional Old West character in the Marvel Comics universe of superheroes back in the 1950s. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm gonna post a picture, see if anybody can find it. I'm gonna see what I can find. The comic book character was named after the real Apache kid, but was totally unrelated to him. A professional wrestler who grew up on the San Carlos reservation performed on the pro circuit for years as the Apache Kid. But outside of the fact that both he and the real kid were Apaches, there were no connection. In 1930, cowboy hero Jack Perrin starred in Apache Kid's Escape, a two-fisted sagebrusher movie filled with shoutouts, horseback chases, and the other Old West action. In 1941, Dan Redberry was the hero in a B-Western entitled The Apache Kid, that bore any resemblance to the real legend. Oh, there you have it, folks. What do you guys think of that one? I hope you guys like that one. Oh, oh yeah. I just ended it, Crofty. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was the end of that one. I have at least one more story left out of that. So, so I'll be doing that one tomorrow. Then after we'll start on the Navajo Code Talkers. Hey, yeah, Tapatios, the Apache Kid in wrestling. Yeah, I'm probably too young to remember it, but if there's anybody else that probably remembers it, they know what I'm talking about. Mine was mine was Jake the Snake, actually. I got older, I liked Stone Cold Steve Austin. Well, it's WWE now, because they changed it to WWF because of the thing with the World Wildlife Foundation or whatever. So they changed their name to WWE. But yeah, it was WWF. Yeah. Oh, I do want to thank you guys for all being here. If you guys haven't hit that like button already, make sure you guys do. If you guys have forgotten, it is greatly appreciated. I see 27 thumbs up and 13 people in chat. And if anybody's willing to donate a little cash for anything, I do have a PayPal link in the about section 2 along with my Cash App. If anybody's willing to donate anything you guys can, it's always appreciated. So, but I do thank you guys once again. I always appreciate all the new visitors dropping by and hitting the like button for me and leaving some comments. Yeah, I thought I'd get a PayPal. Figured it wouldn't hurt. So I do thank you guys. Tapatios, Al SoCal, Rosie Things, Luke Mitchell, Ben and Lots, Rody's Jam Cave, Four Corner Auditing, Russell Sperry, Just the Guy Having Fun. Everybody, man, you guys are all awesome, man. I really appreciate you guys coming here every time I come through. I thank you guys, and we will continue tomorrow on the last part of the book. And catch you guys on the next one. Peace. This is Jose G, the Lone Wolf of Arizona, guys.